The rain was falling hard that night. Mark stood on the porch of his old farmhouse, watching the wind shake the trees. He had just finished fixing the broken fence earlier that day. Now the sky had turned black, and thunder rolled across the hills. He was about to go inside when he saw movement near the gate. Two figures stood there, barely visible in the rain. One was tall and thin, clearly a woman. The other was smaller, a girl, holding her hand tightly. Mark narrowed his eyes. They didn't look human. Their skin was pale with a faint glow, and their clothes were worn, almost torn. The girl had large eyes, too big for her face, and they were filled with fear. Mark didn't move at first. He had seen many strange things since the collapse, but this was different. They weren't begging like others had. They weren't trying to steal. They were just standing, waiting. Then the girl stepped forward. Water dripped from her long silver hair. She looked up at him, and in a soft, shaky voice she whispered, "My mom can clean, cook, and obey. Please, human, just give us shelter." Mark didn't answer. He looked at the woman, the mother, and saw something in her eyes. Not just fear. Something deeper. Shame, exhaustion, silence. He should have closed the door. He didn't need strangers. But something in that girl's voice stayed in his mind. So he opened the gate. "Come in," he said. "You'll both freeze out there." They followed him inside without a word. The mother bowed slightly before stepping through the doorway. The girl smiled, just a little. Mark led them to the main room. It wasn't fancy, just a fireplace, some blankets, and a single working light. He handed them towels and dry clothes. The mother moved quickly, quietly, helping her daughter first before drying herself. She never spoke. Not once. Mark watched them from the kitchen doorway. He had questions, but he didn't ask. "Not yet. You can stay the night," he said. "But only the night. No noise, no stealing, no trouble." The girl nodded fast. "We promise. We don't want trouble. Just a place to breathe." Mark gave them some soup and went upstairs. He didn't trust easily. He kept a small blaster under his pillow, just in case. But sleep didn't come easily that night. Hours later, he woke to a sound. Crying. Very soft, like someone trying not to be heard. He sat up and listened. It came from downstairs, the girl, maybe, or the mother. But there was something else too. Thud, then another. Heavy, slow, outside. Mark grabbed his weapon and crept to the window. Nothing. Then he checked the front door. Claw marks. Deep and fresh. 3 long lines dragged across the wood like something had tried to break in. He looked out into the dark. The rain had stopped, but the night felt heavier now. The silence was thick, like something was watching. When he turned back, the girl was standing behind him. Her eyes were wide. She was shaking. "They found us," she said. "Already." Mark's heart pounded. "Who?" he asked. She looked up. At him. "The ones we ran from. The ones who owned us." Mark froze. He had heard stories. Alien slave ships. Underground buyers. Whole families sold off from dying planets. He looked at the girl again, small, young, afraid. Then at the mother, sitting still in the corner, arms around her knees like she was trying to disappear. "You're safe here," he said quietly. But he wasn't sure if it was true, because out there, in the dark beyond the hills, someone, or something, had found their trail, and Mark had just opened his door to them. The morning was cold and gray. Mist hung in the air like a soft blanket, covering the trees and fields around Mark's farmhouse. Inside, the fire had burned low, but the warmth still lingered. Mark stepped down the stairs slowly, unsure what he would find. But the room was quiet. The alien girl sat near the fireplace, wrapped in an old blanket, her eyes watching the flames. Her mother stood behind her, cleaning the floor with a cloth Mark didn't remember giving them. She moved with careful hands as if every motion needed permission. Still silent. Still obedient. Mark stood for a moment, then spoke firmly. "If you want to stay longer, you follow my rules." The girl looked up quickly and nodded. "Yes, human, we will." "Anything." He raised an eyebrow. "First, don't lie to me. Second, don't take what isn't given. Third, never leave the house without telling me. Understand?" Again, she nodded fast. "We promise. We'll be good." The mother didn't speak, but she paused and bowed her head slightly, showing agreement. Mark sighed. He didn't know why he was doing this. He lived alone for a reason. But something about their quiet fear made him feel responsible. Later that day, he went to chop wood behind the barn. He kept glancing back at the house, not because he didn't trust them, but because something didn't feel right. The claw marks on the door still haunted him. Whatever left them had hands, large ones and claws. By noon, the girl had helped clean the kitchen and swept the stairs. She didn't complain once. When Mark gave her food, she made sure her mother ate first. "You've done all this before?" he finally asked. The girl hesitated, then nodded. "We were trained." Obedience kept us alive. Mark didn't like that answer. Not at all. That night, as the house grew quiet again, Mark kept his weapon close. The sky outside was dark and cloudless. A bad sign. Too quiet meant too much space for bad things to sneak in. He couldn't sleep, so he walked the hallway. Passed by the room they were using. The door was cracked open slightly. He peeked inside. The mother was curled up by the window, facing outward. Not resting. Watching. Always watching. Suddenly, the girl opened her eyes and whispered, "She doesn't sleep much. She's afraid of dreams." Mark stepped back, not wanting to intrude. But before he turned away, the girl said something else, soft but cold. "If they come back, they won't take her again. I'll scream. I'll bite. I'll burn the sky." Her voice didn't sound like a child's then. Mark went back to his room and sat on the edge of the bed. Around midnight, a soft buzz echoed outside. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't the wind. He rushed to the window, a drone. Small, fast, and black, circling the field behind his barn. Mark swore under his breath. He grabbed his blaster and ran down the stairs. The girl met him at the door, her eyes wide. "They've sent machines," she said. "They always send them first. To scan. To mark." "To mark what?" he asked. She looked up at the sky. "The place they will burn." Mark's hands tightened on the blaster. He now understood something terrifying. This wasn't a rescue. This was the beginning of a hunt. And his home had just become the battlefield dot marks on her back. The next morning, the sun rose weak and pale, struggling to warm the ground. Mark stepped out to check the fence line, his boots crunching over frost-covered grass. The air felt heavier than usual, like it knew something was coming. When he returned to the house, the girl was helping in the kitchen again. She had already started boiling water and wiping the old counter. Her movements were sharp, practiced, but her smile was tired. The mother stood by the fire, folding blankets with perfect care. Mark sat at the table and watched her. There was something off about the way she moved. Too slow, too stiff. Then he noticed her tunic had slipped down one shoulder. That's when he saw it, purple lines, deep, healed over but ugly. The kind of marks left by long whips or electric rods. They crawled across her back like old shadows. "Who did that?" Mark asked, his voice low and tight. The mother paused. But she didn't answer. The girl's voice came instead, quiet and flat. She obeyed too well. They punished her for not breaking. Mark's hands clenched into fists on the table. He had heard of traffickers using shock collars, pain sticks, and worse, but never seen proof so close before. The girl continued pouring tea like nothing had happened. She protected me, she said. Took my punishments too. She was strong before they took her strength, but she's still my mother. Mark looked at the woman again, standing so. Still, as if frozen in time. Something boiled inside him. I won't let them take you back, he said. The girl stared at him. You don't even know who they are. Then tell me. She hesitated, looked at her mother. The older woman gave a tiny nod. They're not just traffickers, the girl whispered. They're the Syndar Cartel. They control the HFY slave routes across 10 systems. They raid weak planets, sell bodies, break families, and they hate humans who interfere. Mark leaned forward. Why me? Why come here? You live alone. No cameras, no patrols. No one would look here, and... We heard you helped others before, Mark blinked. He hadn't thought anyone remembered that. Years ago, during the collapse, he'd helped 2 other alien kids escape a bounty group. Since then, he had kept to himself. But clearly, word had traveled. The girl lowered her voice. They're looking for her, not me. She was once a fighter, a Syndar weapon, until she broke her code and fled. They'll do anything to get her back or make her an example. Just then, the farmhouse trembled slightly. A vibration passed through the floor. Mark stood up, tense. What was that? The girl froze. Her eyes widened. They've landed a scout. Mark grabbed his blaster and rushed to the window. Sure. Enough, in the distance, beyond the trees, a sleek black pod had landed. Half buried in the dirt like a claw, no sound. No lights. But something had arrived. He turned back, but the mother was already moving. She picked up the fire poker and stood in front of her daughter. Mark raised an eyebrow. You planning to fight with that? The girl nodded. She will. If they come? Inside, she remembered everything they tried to erase. Outside, the wind picked up again. Inside, silence tightened like a rope around them. Mark looked between them. A wounded mother with scars, a young girl with fire in her eyes, and a man who never wanted war again, but now the war had come to his doorstep, and they were out of time. Asterisk. They want her back. The message came just before dawn. It wasn't sent through normal channels. It didn't come with sound or light. It simply appeared burned into the wall above Mark's kitchen table. Glowing red words, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Return the property or be destroyed. Mark stared at it, jaw clenched. He didn't ask who sent it. He didn't need to. Only one group had the tech and the arrogance to break through his off-grid protections like that. The Syndar Cartel had found them. He turned around to find the girl standing behind him, silent and pale. They know we're here, she whispered. Mark's eyes met hers. That wasn't a warning. That was a promise. The alien mother stood in the shadows, her face unreadable, but her fists were clenched tight. There was no panic in her. Just quiet readiness, like she had already accepted what was coming. Mark pulled his old gear out of storage, an armored vest, some MP grenades, and a long-range rifle he hadn't used in years. The girl watched with wide eyes. You used to be a soldier, she said. No, Mark replied, checking the ammo clip. I used to be a man who made mistakes, but I survived, that's all. He went outside to check the perimeter. Birds weren't singing. The wind was still. Even the leaves seemed afraid to move. In the barn, he found the scout drone, crushed, broken in half. Its body was still sparking from where the alien mother had smashed it with a shovel. Mark raised his eyebrows. She didn't even tell me, he muttered. She just took it down. He dragged the wreck back inside. When the girl saw it, her mouth dropped open. She remembered how to fight, she whispered. They couldn't take that from her. By noon, another message came, this time as a shadow overhead. A Syndar ship hovered far above the house, nearly invisible against the clouds. It didn't land. It just watched. Mark raised his rifle toward it but didn't fire. They're testing us, seeing if we'll run. We can't, the girl said. They'll track our heat, our blood, our scent. The only way out is through. Mark almost smiled. You sound like a human already. The alien mother stepped forward. She held something wrapped in cloth. When she opened it, Mark saw a small metal emblem. Syndar military rank. Gold and black. Burned around the edges. She was one of them. The girl said, a weapon. They used her to train hunters. Until she refused to kill a child. That's when they made her a slave. Mark looked at the symbol, then at the mother's face. That's why they want her back. Not because she's property, but because she's a traitor. The wind outside changed suddenly warm and heavy. The kind of air that comes before. Lightning. Mark knew the signs. They're preparing a raid, he said, tonight, while it's dark. That evening, he reinforced the doors and windows, set up motion sensors, and buried explosives near the back trail. The farmhouse was no fortress, but it would have to do that as the sky darkened. The alien girl stood by the window, holding a kitchen knife. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were clear. Mark put a hand on her shoulder. You don't need to. Fight. I'm not fighting for me, she said softly. I'm fighting for her. In the final minutes before nightfall, the alien mother did something unexpected. She approached Mark and touched his arm lightly, her lips moving with effort. You gave us a chance, she said. Now I give you my strength. It was the first time she had spoken. Mark nodded, heart heavy. Then, in the distance, the sound of engines roared to life. Lights blinked in the trees, and shadows moved closer. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to take Dot, and Mark would make them regret ever thinking they could asterisk. The obedient weapon, the first Syndar soldier stepped onto the farm at midnight. He wore black armor that shimmered like oil under the moonlight. His eyes glowed red through a narrow visor. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Behind him, 4 more figures spread out in silence, moving like shadows, rifles in hand, scanners sweeping the air. Inside the farmhouse, Mark was ready. He crouched by the window, blaster charged, breath steady. But he wasn't alone. The alien girl sat hidden beneath the kitchen table, clutching a small blade. Her eyes locked on the door. Her heart pounded like thunder. The mother stood by the fireplace. Still, calm, silent, but different. Her posture was no longer soft. Her shoulders were squared, her eyes sharp. And in her hands was not the fire poker from before, but something else. A plasma cutter. Old, dusty, but deadly. Mark noticed it and frowned. You know how to use that? The alien mother didn't answer. She just adjusted her grip, stepped forward, and waited. Outside, one of the soldiers triggered the motion. Field. A low hum buzzed through the ground. The Syndar knew now they were not alone. The leader raised his hand, signaling the others to move in. The moment his foot touched the porch, the front door exploded. A shock blast Mark had rigged earlier sent the first 2 Syndar flying. They hit the dirt hard, groaning, armor sparking. The others took cover and opened fire, lasers slicing through the walls of the old house. Mark returned fire, quick and clean, blasting holes through the side window. But the enemy was fast, trained, and angry. Then something happened that made the girl gasp. Her mother moved, not ran, not hid. Moved. Like a predator. She ducked low, rolled across the floor, and slid behind the front door just as a Syndar soldier burst in. Without hesitation, she drove the plasma cutter into the soldier's side, piercing his armor like paper. Sparks flew. The man screamed. Then silence. She stood up slowly, breathing hard, face blank. Mark stared at her. "You weren't just a soldier," he said. "You were a killer." The girl whispered behind him. She was their best. Before they broke her. Before they called her a traitor. The Syndar outside began shouting in their harsh tongue. One of them launched a thermal charge at the house. Mark tackled the girl just in time, shielding her with his vest. The explosion rocked the walls, flames licking the curtains. The alien mother emerged through the smoke like a ghost. Her movements were precise, deadly. She grabbed one enemy from behind, twisted his weapon from his grip, and used it against him before he could scream. Mark fired from the back window, hitting another soldier in the leg. The last one ran, limping toward the ship, but before he reached the field, the mother stepped outside, picked up a broken piece of metal, and hurled it like a blade. It struck true. Silence returned. The wind blew ash across the ground. Inside the house, the girl slowly stood, her body shaking. She ran to her mother and threw her arms around her waist. "I knew you were still in there," she cried. "They couldn't erase you." Mark stood nearby watching. His home was half destroyed. Smoke curled from the ceiling. "But they were alive." The mother looked at him and spoke again, just 3 words. "No more running." Mark nodded. "Then we stay. And if they send more, we bury them too." Because now he understood. She didn't need protection. She was the protection. Anyone who came for her again would learn what happens when obedience turns into rage. The night of blood and fire. The stars were hidden behind thick smoke. Flames crawled along the barn roof, casting long shadows across the ground. Mark stood at the edge of his porch, weapon aimed at the dark field, his chest rising and falling with each breath. Behind him, the girl clung to her mother's leg, too scared to cry now. She had already seen too much, but it wasn't over. Not yet. From the sky, the Syndar ship opened again, this time with no scouts, no warnings. A full squad descended, 8 soldiers. Heavy armor, pulse rifles charged. One of them carried a branded whip. Another wore a necklace made of broken alien tags, trophies of lives taken or sold. Mark's voice was low, tight. "They're not here to capture anymore. They're here to erase." The alien mother stepped forward, calm, focused. Her face was covered in ash, but her eyes burned like stars. She held the plasma cutter in one hand and a Syndar rifle in the other. There was no fear in her, only fury. One Syndar soldier pointed. "Target located. Former Syndar weapon code, VEX7. Termination ordered." Mark raised his blaster. "You'll have to go through me first." The lead Syndar chuckled, gladly. The next few seconds were chaos. Blaster fire lit up the field like lightning. Mark ducked behind the old tractor and returned shots, hitting one in the chest. Another tried to flank but tripped a tripwire bomb he had set earlier. Dust and limbs flew, but the real storm was the mother. She moved like wind and lightning, a blur of rage and memory. Every step she took was a silent scream against the years of silence they forced on her. She flipped over a stone wall and landed behind 2 soldiers. Before they could turn, they were on the ground, one with a broken spine, the other missing his helmet and breath. Inside the house, the girl watched with wide eyes. She pressed her hands to the window. "She's not just fighting for me," she whispered. "She's fighting for every life they tried to break." Mark grunted as a shot grazed his arm. Blood soaked through his sleeve. He rolled behind a water tank and saw one of the Syndar aiming straight at the girl through the window. "No." He sprinted, pushed the child aside just in time as the glass shattered. A burn scar lit across his side, but he stayed standing. "Stay down," he shouted. The girl nodded, trembling. She grabbed a shard of broken glass in case someone got close. Then everything changed. The alien mother VEX7. Once Syndar's prized weapon jumped onto the last enemy's shoulders and forced his own rifle against his throat. "Tell them." She growled for all to hear. "Tell them I remember. Tell them I choose now." She fired. The body dropped. Smoke curled into the night sky. The ground was littered with Syndar armor and broken gear, but no more soldiers came. The ship above flickered, retreated, then vanished into the clouds. Mark fell to one knee, bleeding but alive. The mother helped him up without a word. Her hands were steady, strong. The girl ran out and threw her arms around both of them, sobbing now. "You didn't let them take her. You didn't let them take us." Mark coughed out a breath and smiled weakly. They underestimated what happens when you corner a fighter and give her something to protect. The house was damaged. The fields were scarred. But the battle was done, and under the rising smoke, something new had been born. Not just survival, but family. She cooked, cleaned, and became family. The battle was over, but the scars remained. Ash still clung to the farmhouse walls. Blaster marks burned into the wooden beams. The barn had collapsed, and the garden was now just scorched earth. But somehow, the house still stood, and inside it, so did they. Mark's arm was wrapped in cloth. His ribs ached with every breath, but he kept working. He hammered new boards across the broken windows and swept away the blackened dust. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. The alien mother moved beside him, quietly picking up shattered dishes and burned cloth. But this time, there was no fear in her movements. No hesitation. She wasn't cleaning to obey. She was cleaning because this place had become hers too. Mark noticed it. She walked differently now, taller, lighter, freer. In the kitchen, the girl stirred a pot of broth over the fire. The scent of warm food filled the air. She hummed softly, something between a song and a memory. When she noticed Mark watching, she smiled wide, not out of fear, out of joy. "You'll like it," she said. "It's not stolen. It's ours." Mark chuckled, just a little. He sat at the table, shoulders sore but heart light. That night they ate together. Not as protector and refugees, not as human and aliens, just three people who had survived something terrible. Something that bound them together deeper than words. After dinner, Mark stepped out onto the porch. The stars were finally visible. Again, clean and endless. He lit a small lantern and leaned back in the old chair. The door creaked behind him. The girl came out, wrapped in a blanket. "Do you think they'll come again?" she asked. Mark looked at the sky, then at her. "Maybe, but next time we won't just survive, we'll be ready." She nodded and sat beside him. After a moment, she spoke again, her voice soft. "You gave us a roof, but also something we never had." "What's that?" he asked. "A choice." Inside, the mother placed the last dish on the shelf and paused by the fire. She looked around at the patched-up walls, the quiet warmth, the tiny pieces of peace, and she finally allowed herself to sit. Her face relaxed, her hands stopped trembling. And for the first time in years, she rested without keeping one eye open. Morning came with golden light. Birds returned to the trees. The air smelled of bread and smoke, but also something new, belonging. The girl opened the door and called, "Breakfast is ready." Mark smiled and walked inside. There, waiting at the table, was the alien mother, her hair brushed, her eyes gentle. She poured tea into his mug like she'd always lived there. She cleaned out, she cooked. She obeyed no one now, but she cared. And somehow, without him realizing, the quiet stranger he once found in the rain had become something more. Family. As they sat down together, the girl took Mark's hand and whispered, "You didn't just give us shelter. You gave us a home." And this time, Mark didn't argue, because it was true.